Welcome to the NEREJ NYREJ podcast. I'm your host, Rick Kaplan. My guest today is Joe DiPompeo, and he is with Structural Workshop. And Joe is going to talk to us a little bit about the regulations that are in New Jersey and New York on facades and parapet.
Yeah, that's the main topic of today, is a new requirement that kind of adds on to what we discussed on our last podcast.
Okay, so why don't we go right into that and find out what, I did hear a little bit about this topic, and I know it's fairly new. I think, what is it, 2022 they come up with it?
No, well, it doesn't start till January 1st, 2024.
Okay, so
there recently was something in the New York Real Estate Journal. Someone had written a small blurb on the basics of it. We have something that we're going to have in there along with some ads in the near future, but it's just getting out to the public, and the requirements don't start till January 1st of next year.
Okay, I'm confused with the garage.
Yeah, correct.
That was in 2022.
This is actually an add-on to that local law, but that only is a legal distinction, that it was kind of passed as part of the same thing. This is a completely separate and different, as we'll talk about, different program. So,
okay, so what are they going to be wanting you to look at? So what are they going to want to look at to make sure that everything is sound?
Sure. This applies to, hold on, I just want to make sure I get this right. Every building owner in New York City must have an observation, and this is straight from New York City Buildings website here. Every building owner must have an observation of the parapet on their building, performed in accordance with the requirements of what we're going to talk about. All buildings with parapets fronting the public right-of-way, regardless of height, with the exception of detached 1 or 2 family homes or buildings, with a fence or other barrier preventing access to the exterior wall. So basically, anybody that owns a building that is on the sidewalk, has a parapet that has the potential to fall onto the sidewalk, same logic behind Local Law 11 with the bigger facade inspection program, needs to get that parapet inspected annually. So that's one of the differences. And we can go through more, but that's the answer to your first question. Basically, any building in New York that's on the sidewalk and has a parapet, which most buildings on the sidewalk do, needs to get inspected annually.
And the main reason is because of anything falling onto people walking along the sidewalk, I'm sure.
Correct. I mean, there's Local Law 11, which we talked about pretty extensively last time, and that's been in place for a long time. That applies to bigger buildings. It's a very formal program. You have to submit everything to DOB. There's very formal requirements for what you have to do. You have to open up probe holes and check connections, and it's this applies to many more buildings, but it's also a lot looser, simpler requirements, and it's really only looking for safety hazards. I mean, parapets do, especially on older brick and masonry buildings, you get deterioration, you get expansion and contraction, which cracks them, and there is probably as much, if not more, of a risk from parapet issues and bricks and pieces of parapets falling to the street as there is to what Local Law 11 looks to solve, which is bigger buildings and stuff falling off of them. I mean, I don't know about you, but if I was walking down the street and got hit in the head with a brick, I whether it came from 8 stories or 3 stories, I don't know if that would really, I'd be thinking about that at the moment, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's, we talked about this when we were talking about all the garage structures and how everyone just assumes, well, it's a building, it must be inspected all the time because that people are going in and out of it, and they same with the walking along the street. People are just not assuming that anything's going to fall from the sky. You're walking along the street, you don't expect
some parapets that I've seen, again, especially this really, I mean, although it applies to all buildings, like a modern building with a curtain wall system or, a bypass metal stud wall system, typically they're going to be fine. This is really geared for brick and masonry parapets, and they do deteriorate. We've seen a lot of bad ones that are out of plumb, that are cracked, that are deteriorating, that have loose pieces, not just in New York, and very common on the Gold Coast of New Jersey and Jersey City and Hoboken and Bayonne. This is just the style of construction here. And these and the next thing is probably going to be sidewalk vaults, because a lot of the sidewalks in New York, the building goes out under the sidewalk in the basement, and those are notoriously bad for rusting and corrosion. Nobody ever goes in them, nobody ever looks at them, and they get leaked on for years. It's a miracle that you don't have more things crashing through sidewalks. I think that's generally a function of, there's generally not vaults under parts of sidewalks that get driven on, but occasionally you do see a delivery truck or something that backs up onto the sidewalk and crashes through the vault. So I think that's probably the next thing coming in terms of things that should get inspected.
For years, in the downtown shopping areas, they used to have the elevators right on the sidewalks. It would come right up, the doors would open up on the sidewalk and the elevator would come up, they load up the order and bring it back down. I don't think they do that anymore.
No, that I haven't seen.
Yeah, well, I know it used to, they used to do it a lot in New York City and also in Boston, where, you couldn't get a truck behind these buildings.
Right.
And the reasoning for that. And most of their warehousing of the stores would be underground in the basements.
Right.
So that elevator would come up through the sidewalk, they'd load all their freight on it, and then they lower it down, and then the doors would shut on top of it and back to a sidewalk.
Right.
So
that's at least something that's getting looked at and probably maintained, because it's used and somebody has to keep it running to keep their business going. But a lot of these vaults are just
that's the thing. I don't think they use them anymore.
Correct. They have doors and stairs. I haven't seen elevators. They're probably all removed, but other than the ones that are used, they're kind of abandoned and they just leak. I mean, they're nobody maintains the water tightness of the roof. So, and a lot of them have steel framing. So put water and steel together and give it 30 years of not looking at it, what happens.
Right. No, like I said, most people just unassuming that anything is going to happen, because they just figured, oh, this building was built and people come and inspect it all the time, or the owner is aware of anything kind of deterioration, is going to fix it. But that's not the case.
No, I mean, there's sometimes it's the case, but there's plenty of things there that you only need one of them to go wrong for it not to be the case. So
right.
sometimes the owners are oblivious, sometimes they're knowingly oblivious, and sometimes they're knowingly knowing and don't care and don't want to do it or can't. I mean, granted, there are situations where there's just not the funds available and they're trying, and there's others who try to do everything by the book, and it really varies tremendously. Like everything in the New York metro area, we have a tremendous variety of types of buildings, age of buildings, and how attentive owners are to their buildings.
Well, but you're pretty good about expressing what your rates are to inspect these things. I know I read that article that you wrote on the garage inspections. It gave someone kind of an idea of what it would cost for someone like you to come out, or exactly
the parapet. What we're thinking of doing, yes, because I didn't get to this yet, but we'll get into it now. The inspections are a little bit different, and they need to be done annually, and the report needs to be sent to, obviously, if there's a safety issue, it needs to go right to DOB, and you got to get sidewalk bridging. I mean, that's the only good thing about parapets having issues on them is the way to protect pedestrians, if you do, is you put up a sidewalk bridge, and you know how much of that is around in New York, and there's companies on call 24 hours a day to get a sidewalk bridge in a pinch, and it's not very hard to do. Not cheap, but it's very common. So you can almost immediately alleviate a safety concern by getting that sidewalk bridge up. But provided there's not a safety concern, it needs to be inspected once a year, and the report does not get filed with DOB unless there's a safety concern. It goes to the building owner, and they have to keep them for 6 years. So you keep a running tally of 6 years worth of reports. So since the onus now really for record keeping and scheduling and maintaining this is on the owners as opposed to, everything having to go through DOB, what we'd like to do is set up kind of a service and a program for the owners where they can kind of hire us for the first year, but we'll automatically reach out to them. We might keep their billing info. We'll reach out to them when it's time. We'll schedule it for them, and we'll just do that every year for them, and we'll keep everything on file with us also. So if they lose it or have an issue, we have a running tally of all the reports, and kind of manage the process for them, because it's the onus is on them in this case as opposed to the engineer and DOB in some of the other cases. But I don't have any pricing yet. It's really, we're going to kind of have a standard pricing for your typical row house building. Those are kind of all going to be the same, but there's factors here. You have to do up close inspections, and the access to that's going to vary. I mean, you could have a building with a fire escape where I can just walk up the fire escape and do the up close inspection and walk down and be done in half an hour. Another one, we might need to rent a lift and close off the sidewalk and get permits and all kinds of other things. And obviously that's two very different costs for the same size building. So,
what I don't understand is, in the long run, if someone's owning property, the long run, it's probably less expensive for them to have some kind of a maintenance program that they put together on their own, or some property owners, their philosophy is, if nothing's going wrong right now, I'm not touching it. I'll just wait until something goes wrong, which could end up costing a lot.
There's a lot of different ways to make money in real estate. You have principal pay down, you have income, you've got appreciation, and all sorts of variations of those. That's why we're all in the real estate business, and we love it for those reasons. But you also have a lot of different ways to work those approaches, and there's certainly plenty of people who look at a building purely from a cash and numbers perspective and don't care about anything else. And if they're cash flowing on the building, they're not even going to look at anything else until they're legally required to, or something becomes a major liability, or something brings it to their attention. Now you have smart owners that invest in their buildings for the long term and want to keep their life cycle costs down, which is kind of what you're getting at, the total cost of ownership and the time you own that building. And you can do tremendous amounts of life cycle cost improvement by spending a little money often on maintenance as opposed to waiting for there to be a problem. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
It takes time for all these things to be implemented, like for these new rules and regulations. They're all safety regulations, which is very important, because nowadays you have so many people that walk our public streets, drive our public streets. You have to have some kind of safety precautions, in place. That's why, when people were working on building, OSHA was developed, so that, these contractors, they go to work, unfortunately, accidents still happen, but it's not as frequent as it did. Go back into the 40s.
Yeah, you see pictures of people 70 stories up, iron workers with no protection whatsoever, just kind of doing the tightrope walk on a beam. I mean, that's
right.
That's crazy.
I mean, my grandfather, that's how he died. He was killed. He fell off a 7-story building.
Oh,
God. He was a bricklayer.
Oh.
But
when was that? Like what?
That was in the 40s.
Okay, so
before I was around.
Yeah, not firsthand experience, but a family legacy experience in that. So yeah, it's crazy some of the things they used to do back in the 30s and 40s and 50s.
Yeah, there were no regulations. And basically, now we're coming into eras that we had regulations, but now it's needed. Now we have to have even more safety regulations because of the amount of people using our streets and
yeah, it's unfortunate because I would certainly prefer a world where, the building owners properly managed their building and didn't have to, worry about these types of regulations, but they did it themselves. But yeah, when they're not doing it, and the public safety, people who have nothing to do with anything here, they're just walking down the street, or sleeping in their building at night, is affected. Unfortunately, I think they need a little bit of a nudge. So that's what these rules aim to do.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more common, but maybe because of the internet and the news outlets on cable, or there's 20 million of them on the cable TV. We hear about it more often.
Yeah, that's with anything in the news, though, right? I mean, with child abductions or
Right.
anything that seems like it's so much worse now than it used to be. It's generally not. If you look at the statistics, it's just you hear about all of it immediately, so you wouldn't know about what's going on in Kansas, years ago. But now, if something happens there, you know about it 3 seconds later with an alert on your phone. So it's this constant barrage of how terrible the world is, when
Right.
statistically, on a lot of measures, we're doing tremendously better than we ever have. So we're getting off topic, but
That's right. So I mean, we're going in the right direction. That's the main thing.
so let me fill in the blanks here on the rest of this. So the basics that it must include, but not limited to. Obviously, there's discretion for the person inspecting the parapet, but they want the plumbness of it checked, which means if it's leaning either way, and that's very common for parapets to lean, especially as old brick masonry parapets. If there's excessive deterioration, and again, that's another thing that's very common. A lot of times the parapet takes the brunt of the rain and wind and things because it's the highest point up there. If you look at the wind loading in the building code, the loads on the parapet are the highest out of everything because the wind blows over the top of them and creates a suction on the backside in addition to the pressure on the front side. So you have very high pressures on corners and parapets and things that stick out. And then things that are attached to it, if you have antennas or railings or ladders, things, fire escapes, just make sure that the attachments are stable. Those are the main things that it requires. And then obviously it's up to the discretion of the person inspecting. If they need to do more, you need to get up close to it. So if you have roof access to it, or a fire escape access or something like that, or window access, that many cases will be enough, but there will be cases where unfortunately access is probably going to cost more than the inspection to get somebody up close to it. And that's it. The immediately have to notify New York City buildings if there's a safety hazard. Otherwise, you just file it with the owner. As I said, what we're going to try to aim to do is kind of have our own parallel service to keep all this organized for the owner. And that's it. They got to keep it for 6 years. And there's a couple of requirements to what has to go in the report, but that's nothing, just what you have to put in there. But there's nothing there that's earth shattering or different than any other report. And unsafe conditions need to be corrected within 90 days. And the public protection, which will be sidewalk bridging, has to remain in place until the condition is remedied. And that's where we are as of now. So we'll come January 1st, we'll know a lot more because everyone's going to start doing these.
Yeah, well, it sounds like this is a positive thing.
I think it is. I mean, it's just from experience of seeing the condition of some of these parapets. I mean, we're doing a ton of inspections in Jersey City now under their facade program, and a lot of those are brick masonry row house buildings that have parapets. So we flag the parapets. Sometimes the parapets are the only issue. Facade is perfect, but once you get above that roof line, that wall is just hanging up there in space and in the wind. It's a whole different condition that deteriorates quicker than the rest of the building.
Okay, well, Joe, you know your stuff, so.
Yeah.
And you have a team of people that know their stuff, so people can be assured that if they call you, they'll get the right job done, and they'll be fine to, their regulation. Be fine in the regulations that are coming forward.
Yeah, we have a lot of experience with this. I recently had to do an expert report, and you're right in the intro about you sell yourself essentially. That's just the nature of being an expert witness. But yeah, I now I have in there that I've inspected thousands of structures, of all types, sizes, ages, and getting to that age where where I've got quite the resume and quite the experience, and
Right.
and just so sometimes just seeing that many things over that much time, I mean, you really can just immediately pick up what's going on. So
Well, I want to thank you for the information, Joe, and I'm sure the property owners in New Jersey and New York will also want to thank you as well if they need any information, or they need your help for any of this, their facades, their garage, their facade, their parapet. They can find out more about your company at structuralworkshop.com.
structuralworkshop.com. Yep.
Yeah.
And the number is 973-771-6970. That's our main number. And we're going to have something in the New York Real Estate Journal on this in the next month or two. I don't know the specifics yet, but we're putting something together for it.
Yeah, and we do appreciate that, because you do put out some great information when you write your articles.
Mhm.
So I know a lot of people will be looking forward to reading that as well. Again, thank you, Joe. We're talking with Joe.
Great to see you again.
And good to see you. We're talking with Joe DiPompeo, and he is with Structural Workshop. And I'm Rick Kaplan from the New England and New York Real Estate Journal. And until next time.
Right. Thank you.